Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Vikings Vent Line every Sunday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and podcast feed. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button for daily Vikings entertainment as we have kind of moved off the slowest part of the offseason. Training camp finally is upon us here at Purple Daily, so we're going to have tons of camp notes coming up from Judd. And if you, the Vikings fan, wants to join this show, this is Vikings Vent Line. It is a show for you, the fans. If you'd like to be a part of an episode, you can join me every week to talk about the upcoming season, talk about training camp, of course, it's about to happen, talk about last year's draft, next year's draft, anything football and Vikings related you want to talk about, hit me up. I'd love to hear from you. This offseason edition will live on for another month or so. You can join the show by emailing vikingsventline@gmail.com. That's vikingsventline@gmail.com. We welcome all Vikings fans, so if this is a show you've been on before, or maybe you want to finally join the first time, hit me up. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. I'm going to have my guys Alex and Matthew here in just a second join us to talk about training camp and the upcoming season. But hit the like button, subscribe button right here on Purple Daily, and shout out to our friends at Quick Trip who help power Purple Daily with Vikings Vent Line starting here soon after the regular season, when the regular season starts. Vikings Vent Line will live on with Mackie, Judd, and myself, but this offseason edition still lives on. For the last few months, I've had a blast talking to as many Vikings fans as possible. So hit me up if you'd like to be on. It's Vikings Vent Line @gmail.com. All right, let's get our dudes in here, Alex and Matthew. Boys, welcome to Purple Daily. Welcome to Vent Line. Thank you for being here.
What's up?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Matthew, you've been on before. We've been seeing you around a ton at Purple Daily events. Welcome back. How you doing? How you feeling about the upcoming year?
I'm doing great, and I feel let's just say I feel optimistic. I feel like this year, it might be a developmental year, but I think it's going to be a good year.
Good. I love it, man. And then, Alex, I know you've been on the Judd's Hockey Show edition of Vikings Vent Line, but this is first time for you on the Purple Daily edition. How are you doing, and are you excited for this Vikings season coming up?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for it, mainly because I have no idea what's going to happen this year. It could be terrible. It could be great. It could be somewhere in between, which that's generally what Viking seasons are. So who knows what'll happen.
Yeah, we had a guest on a few weeks ago that kind of said, I think the expectations for the season are the best because we don't really have expectations for the season, which is really interesting. It's kind of an open door to your point there where it could go great, could go bad. At the end of the day, it's probably going to be a classic Viking season, so the expectations are kind of wide open at this point. Well, dudes, with training camp here, knocking on the door, finally, I'll start with you here, Alex. Who has the most approved to you when training camp opens here? This could be anyone on the roster, could be a rookie, a veteran, a second-year player. So to you, who has the most approved at training camp this year?
I think to me it's Blake Brandal because he was kind of given a contract extension and he really hasn't played too much. And when he has, it's been okay. Like it hasn't really been like, oh, wow, he's really shown off. It's just been kind of like, okay, he's come in and kind of, shown that he can play a little bit, but they've been kind of talking about, how, okay, he's going to be the, starting guard. And we've had guard issues for how many years in a row now. And, I don't know if, he's going to be able to fix it immediately. So to me, he's going to have to show that he's a better player than, he's going to have to compete with Ed Ingram and with Dalton Reisner. And if he can't do it, then, you got to switch over to those two as the guards again. But to me, that's the main one that's got a lot to prove.
Yeah, they gave him a contract extension, and yes, to your point, he hasn't really shown that he was deserving of that. I don't know if that was maybe like a hedge from the Vikings of, well, they weren't going to be in the market to pay for like a big top dollar for a guard, so they'll bring back a guy that's familiar with the offense and might have a new gear to him. But yes, there has been a revolving door, literally, of guards that just have people coming in and out of the building essentially every season. So we'll see what he can do. It is a good one. It's not maybe at top of mind with obviously some rookies and some early players from the Kwesi era that might have a lot more to prove this year at training camp, but it is still a good one, and it's still going to be interesting to see who wins those spots there. Matthew, how about you, man? Which player at training camp do you think has the most to prove this year?
If I were to choose one singular player, I would actually pick Jonathan Greenard because he's essentially replacing Daniil Hunter. So those are some big shoes to fill. I mean, I think there's also a few other guys that I think pretty much anyone that we added in the offseason on the defensive side, like Andrew Van Ginkel. I mean, Dallas Turner, we've drafted him. So, I mean, I honestly think that there's going to be a lot of guys on the defensive side that have something to prove.
Yeah, Greenard was brought in obviously as like kind of their biggest addition. He had a great year with the Texans last year. He's not a household name maybe to a lot of other common fans, but had a monster season and probably is supposed to be the biggest headed monster on that Vikings defense this year. They said goodbye to Daniil Hunter and kind of replaced the cupboards with a bunch of other players that would have cost just as singular as much as Daniil. So it's kind of puts them in an interesting spot. Let's jump around a little bit here. Let's actually talk about the Vikings defense. So, I mean, do you think, Matthew, that the Vikings defense is better on paper last year than it was, or better on paper this year, excuse me, than it was last year? What are your kind of overall expectations for the defense?
It's a toss-up to me because I think, like, the defense last year masked a lot of the weaknesses that we were having on offense because of the fact that we were having that quarterback carousel and stuff like that, and there was times where the offense wasn't as efficient, i.e. in the Raiders game last year, where the defense had to step up big time. I would say, yeah, it's tough. I would say maybe they're marginally better. I think they look this year just because of the fact that, I mean, yeah, we lost Daniil Hunter, but we've added a couple of different pieces that in his place. Like we added Greenard, and then we also drafted Dallas Turner and signed Van Ginkel and stuff like that. So I feel like we have a composite of guys that have made up for that loss.
For sure. Alex, how about you, man? I mean, do you think this Vikings defense takes another step forward? Is there some stuff they can do that they weren't doing last year that might they be able to improve upon? What is your kind of overall take on the defense going into this year with Brian Flores in year 2?
I think my expectation for the defense, like on paper, I think it's very similar to last year. Where the difference is this year, I think, has more upside, just with, some of the rookie players you brought in and adding, Van Ginkel and Greenard and kind of younger defensive players. I think that gives you more expectations. You're replacing an older Jordan Hicks with a younger player, Blake Cashman, and, replacing an older Daniil Hunter with a Jonathan Greenard, right? So you're younger in that aspect. But I think it's going to be maybe a little bumpy to start out just because, when you're replacing all of these defenders – and adding new ones in, it's like last year, how it was kind of rough start defensively, and then eventually they caught on later as the season went on. I could see something very similar, especially with a tougher early schedule, where defensively it's kind of rough the first month and a half, and then they kind of start to figure it out. But I think defensively it could be very similar to last year, except maybe a little better with just some of the players that stayed on.
Yeah, they have a tough start. Vikings do schedule-wise this year. It's going to be a pretty tough sledding. And last year, yeah, the defensive performances were basically in thirds, right? They got off to a slow start, and then for the next third of the season, they actually were one of the better defenses in the NFL, and then the wheels kind of fell off again in the final third. So can they be more consistent? I mean, yeah, the schedule is going to be tough to start. It's going to be hard to slow down quarterbacks. This is becoming obviously a very offensive-centric league. It's hard, to be a Legion of Boom like we saw in Seattle. It's hard, even when Zimmer was at his peak here with the Vikings, to sustain that over seasons. And I think having Flores here in year 2 is big. I mean, Alex, do you think Brian Flores is probably going to bounce after this year? Would you like to see him stay as DC if you had your wish? I mean, do you think Brian Flores will be sticking around here beyond 2024?
If it was up to me, he'd be here for as long as possible. I think he will stick around another year after this year, just because I don't. A lot of times it's the coaches that are on look at this great playoff team or team that made the playoffs out of nowhere and let's go get their top coordinator, right? And I don't think that's going to be the Vikings this year. Now, if the defense does end up being a top 10-ish, top 5-ish defense, that we're not expecting, then yeah, I think Flores will bounce after this year because I think there will be some team, maybe Buffalo decides to move on and get a new coach, and that would be somewhere he would want to go. But I think he will be back with us next year, just because I don't think the defense this year is going to just amaze us.
Makes sense. On the offensive side, I mean, Matthew, what are your expectations for Sam Darnold here? Does he win the job, which it sounds like he's obviously kind of the de facto starting quarterback? I know there might be a competition, but I mean, what are your overall expectations for Sam Darnold as your bridge quarterback until J.J. McCarthy takes over?
For Sam Darnold, all I really want is some competent quarterback play. That's really all I want. Competent quarterback play that gives us a chance to win and stuff like that. That's really all I'm expecting from Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, they had to ride the wave of Josh Dobbs, and it was fun for a couple weeks. But then, the carriage turned into a pumpkin, and Nick Mullins, God bless him, was trying his best, and Jaron Hall was obviously not ready yet. And yeah, competent play. I mean, it is the best roster he's been around. Like, do you think that this probably will be the best chances for Sam Darnold to succeed, though, as a professional quarterback?
Yeah, I think this would obviously be his best chance at proving that because I've always had the belief that Sam Darnold's career hasn't been a great one. I mean, he supposedly has improved since he was been out of the starting role and been in the backup role and stuff like that. And they have said that he's made progression in his development as a quarterback. But I would say this is obviously his best chance at proving that he could be a legitimate starter in this league.
Yeah, he definitely has the best roster around him, and I think just from watching interviews and just kind of watching some other stuff too with his time with the Jets and the Panthers, is I just don't know if everything up there is mentally there to be a cerebral quarterback in the NFL. I think physically he has a lot of the tools actually. But I don't know if he, does that break you when you go to the Jets and things obviously don't go according to plan? Like, I don't know if he can maybe get back to that, but it is probably his last shot at being obviously a viable starting quarterback in the league before he probably does turn into a backup or is just completely out of football. Alex, what are your kind of expectations for Sam Darnold as the Vikings bridge quarterback in 2024?
My expectations are for him to be probably a below average starting quarterback. He will be better than what we had last year, but I mean, a lot of what we had last year was just bad quarterback play. But with Sam Darnold, he's never thrown more than 20 or more touchdowns in a season. He's thrown over 3,000 yards just once in a season, and this is a quarterback friendly league, right? Where you should be able to do that. Now, this is the best offense that he will have played for outside of the limited time he played with San Fran last year, but he wasn't the starter. But can he get to average quarterback play? I think that's what KOC is going to have to try to get him to, because my expectation for him is, okay, he's going to be somewhere between 25 and 20 for quarterback starters is what, that's what my hope is.
Yeah.
Can KOC get him to 17, just, close to average? I think that would be a win for this year, and he could probably get us through the whole year. But if I don't think anything higher than that is realistic, because he just hasn't shown the ability to do that in any of his other seasons.
Timeline-wise, Alex, do you have a time frame roughly of when J.J. McCarthy would take over? Do you think that happens in season? Do you think that they can ride Sam Darnold throughout the entire regular season this year and they make him the starter McCarthy that is next year? What's kind of your timeline for the rookie quarterback to take things over?
My guess is, with the first half being as tough as it is, I do think Sam Darnold is going to struggle, and I think that they end up putting in J.J. McCarthy, once the schedule starts to lighten up and kind of get some easier games for him. Because I think J.J. McCarthy can show that he is a good enough quarterback, to play in this league, but they're not just going to throw him in there just because they're desperate. But, after the bye week, maybe they go for it. Maybe, once it's, I think there's a Thursday night game towards the middle at some point. Maybe they, give them that extra half week, extra week of preparation, and then they put him in there. But I just, with Sam Darnold, I don't think, I think with Sam Darnold, you hope he can hold down the fort for as long as possible. And then once JJ McCarthy's ready to go, you just let him go.
Matthew, how about you, man? Do you have a timeline of when you'd like to see JJ McCarthy take over?
I'm pulling up the Vikings schedule. I'm just briefly going over it in my head. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty tough schedule. I would say it all really depends on like what happens before the bye. I say because I mean, obviously you got the opener against the Giants, which hopefully that's a win, and then after that it's pretty much murder until the bye. Um, I would say if we are at like 2 and 3 or better before the bye, I say we give Darnold the benefit of the doubt and let him go past that. I would say if maybe or maybe if we're like 1 and 4 or less, maybe JJ takes over. But I would actually prefer not to see JJ that early. I would rather see JJ if we see him at all this season, like probably not even until like late November or like early December, like week 12 or 13. So
Yeah, I think maybe after that Thursday night game against the Rams, there might be a soft spot there to make things, easier for a week and a half type of preparation. I definitely don't want him to make his debut on a short week playing the Rams either. So it's either going to be probably right after the bye, unless the Vikings are really struggling, or probably I think kind of after that Rams game to ease things in. And of course, as we learned last season, and as just any football fan knows, injuries are probably going to be the thing that forces the hand to get JJ McCarthy in. I mean, it's probably going to be more likely that than I think the former of just poor play from Sam Darnold, unfortunately. Guys, before we wrap up here on Vikings Vent Line, Alex, any last takes, any shout outs you love to give here on Purple Daily? The floor is yours.
I'll give a shout out to my dad. I wouldn't be, a Viking fan without him, and he's one of the most optimistic people I know, and I don't know how he can be with this team, but somehow he is every single year. My hottest Viking take is that they will be fourth place in the division, but we will be really optimistic about their season. Like they'll end up with 6 wins or 7 wins, but this division is as tough as it's been in the longest time. The Bears are only getting better. Lions are staying the same, which is really good. Packers are staying the same, which is really good. And I think they will be fourth place this year. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, the division is probably the best it's been in a very, very long time, and they can be in fourth place with signs of growth, from JJ McCarthy at some point, and that could be exciting to see how they build upon in the offseason, which they're scheduled to have a lot of cap space, and if they're fourth in the division and probably a 6-win team, that's very likely a top 10 pick. There would be reasons for optimism there and kind of looking at the long-term plan and not just in the 2024 season as a success or failure. Matthew, how about you, man? Any last takes, any shout outs here on Ventline?
shout out to my dad and my brother. They're the ones that got me into watching and / listening to Score North. So shout out to them. My hottest take would be I think the NFC North is going to have 3 playoff teams this year, and I think the Vikings are going to be one of them.
All right.
I think outside of the NFC North, just looking at the schedule, I mean, we're playing the AFC South, which is outside of Houston, it's a pretty weak division.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's definitely some teams that are on our schedule that I think people are kind of over-evaluating and overrating. I'm just going through it quickly. You got the 49ers. We honestly don't know what's going to happen. Brandon Ayuk's requesting for a trade. So, I mean, they could be worse off by start of the season. You got the Jets, which, I mean, obviously Rodgers is back, but I have no idea if people are going to see them as a Super Bowl contender, but, at the same time, they are in the division with the Bills and the Dolphins and stuff like that. So I think Vikings have a chance to surprise some people this year. And I honestly believe they will be one of the 3 teams coming out of the NFC North with the playoff position. Probably won't be the division champ, maybe not even second place. That's probably going to go to like the Lions and the Packers, but I think they have a definitive shot in being the 3rd team out of the NFC North to make the playoffs.
Yeah, even obviously with the big question mark at how well Sam Darnold is going to perform or when JJ McCarthy is going to play. I mean, the roster, at least offensively, and having a great head coach in Kevin O'Connell does boost things here. This isn't just a stripped down roster that's trying to reload and retool. I mean, there's a lot of good moving parts to this car, and if things do exceed expectations, most importantly, the quarterback, being able to not train wreck games like we saw last year, then yeah, I think they do have a shot of being one of the 7 playoff seeds in the NFC this year. Alex, Matthew, thank you for bringing on Vent Line. Awesome stuff here today on Purple Daily. If anyone wants to be on a future episode, again, hit me up. It's VikingsVentLine@gmail.com. Rock your Purple Daily swag like our guy Matthew is there on the YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll be back on Monday with training camp finally here for the Minnesota Vikings.